that's not.
You see, that's just hypothesis.
Well, look, if you're thinking logically, and you say, we want to know what causes something, and we've eliminated every single possible cause except one, and we cannot eliminate that last cause logically, right?
There might be a cause we haven't thought of.
That's the only possible explanation.
Or that we incorrectly eliminated another cause. And then
Well,
maybe
then-
stealing does create wealth.
Well, then you gotta go back and check it, and you say, does stealing always consist?
Here's my question: is there something as clear as the what's it called, what's the teaching? Prajnaparamita. Is there something as clear as that written on karma? Because the Prajnaparamita is very convincing on the logic of why emptiness is by direct perception.
I think I don't mean to jump in, but I think just like some of the tenets of karma, the high level stuff, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me, right?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I don't see it work in my life, but I mean, it seems pretty obvious. If you're angry, like that could make you like ugly or something.
Intuitively,
like that, right?
you can understand.
Yeah, or if you're always taking, or not even taking, if you're always like holding on to stuff like really, really tight, like you ever see like the homeless guys who have all this like crap, and like they're like, it's like there's something there, like something about how poor they are, but and how tight they hold on to things.
So intuitively, we can believe that the sun revolves around the earth. Doesn't make it true, and also like causality and coincidence are
Sure. I'm just saying, like, maybe it doesn't make it true, but I'm just saying it seems kind of easy to see some of these things anyway. So, like, if you can buy it, maybe a little bit of it, then maybe you can take a little bit more of a leap of faith, especially when you start
faith.
some of
I
these
agree.
other...
I totally buy into with faith. I think it's very easy in a Western society where it's Judeo-Christian to believe in the more you give, the more you receive. It's very easy. But we can prove emptiness. We can really look at it and analyze it until finally we say, aha, that pen is a chew toy to a dog. I get that. But I don't get the karma thing. You never have that aha. I don't. Do you know anyone who's got the aha moment with karma? And what did they read that gave them that?
Well, I think...
Is there a teaching that
No,
gives it so clearly?
I don't think it's that easy. I think it's a question of a lot of study and a lot of repetition over time. I don't think there's one definitive source where you read it and you go like, okay, that nailed it, I got it, okay, I'm sold. Because it's deductive reasoning through a process of elimination.
Versus the Wisdom Sutra, you can read it, and you can read it and say, aha, that makes sense. You can't read any sutra that proves karma. Is there a sutra which proves karma?
When you say proves karma, what does that mean?
In the way that I forget what it's called, but the mother essence of wisdom proves emptiness.
I'm not a scriptural authority by any stretch of the imagination. So I couldn't say, and I couldn't begin to sort of reference original scriptures to say, look at this one and it will sell you. So sorry.
And I know you want to start, but I think part of it is because when the Buddha was teaching, he was teaching in a Vedic tradition where they had already so established the concept of karma that they accepted it without question. Versus emptiness, they were sort of discovering it for the first time. And therefore they rigorously had to prove it. And so these sutras are really complete and convincing on the subject of emptiness, but not so much on the subject of karma.
Well,
as a Westerner, I can't find anything.
No, I understand it feels that way too, and I can't really speak to it. I mean, I can't say that as a tradition, living tradition of 2,500 years, there have been many masters over the past, and many scriptures written, and many commentaries written on karma. But I'm not enough of a scholar to say, read this one and read this one and read this one, to try to sort of satisfy your wish to have that definitive, precise explanation.
It was Amador Kosha? What was it? It was class 4? You took class 4, right? What was it? Was it class 4? Karma? Or was it 5?
5.
Yeah. 5. And that was the text, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, part of the issue is we don't
that
have...
that gives no argument that's got a valid reasoning argument. It just sort of into
It says here are the laws of karma, and here's,
Yeah.
here's the explanation of it, but again, it's deductive reasoning. So,
loosely.
so anyway, you'll have to continue to research it, so I'm not gonna be able to satisfy that need right now. Okay, so we're gonna get on to logic and logical statement and definition of logic, which I hope is not too confusing. So we're going to talk about a reason. Okay. A reason is anything which is put forth
As a reason.
as a reason. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't like you because today is Wednesday. Is a reason. Okay. It's cold today because I had potatoes for lunch. Is a reason. Okay. Doesn't have to be logical. Doesn't have to make sense. Doesn't have to be true. It's a reason. That's all. Okay. So when we're studying logic and when we're evaluating logic and reasoning, the presumption is a lot of the reasons are going to be faulty. So we don't care. We're not trying to suss that out on the front end. Okay. A reason is just what's put forth. That's all. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's false or not. Okay. So there are three. So when we talk about Buddhist logic and evaluating a statement, there are three relationships that have to hold. Okay. A logical statement in Buddhism follows a certain form, a certain format. Okay. There are three parts or three relationships. Okay. There's a certain statement. So when you study logic, there's a sort of classical statement which is always used to begin the study of logic. The classical argument for all logic is take sounds. Right? It's a changing thing because it's made. So you have three parts. Take blank. It's this because that. Right? So they use sound, and this is because in ancient India, Hindu school said that Om was a universal sound that had no beginning and no ending, it never changed, and yada, yada, yada. So from a Buddhist perspective, they said, all right, take sound. In its logic, take sound. Right? It's a changing thing because it's made. These are the three parts of the logical argument. Right? Each of those has a relationship to the next. When you're evaluating logic, one relates to two, relates to three. It's a progression, right? Consider boom. It's boom. Because boom. Okay? Those three things relate. 1, 2, 3. There's a relationship. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a logical statement and a proof, right? If there was no relationship between those three things, how could one prove the next? Right? Right? Okay. So they're saying take sound. It's a changing thing. They want to prove it's a changing thing. The reason is it's because it's made. So they're saying if something's made, it's a changing thing. Right? So we're going to evaluate that logical statement. And there's a precise way you evaluate a logical statement. Rules. And it has to do simply with logic and reason, and which they figured out through analysis. Okay? And so here it is, okay? If you write it down, it'll be easier to follow. I'm going to give it to you. They take years to unravel it in the monastery, right? But we'll do it. Okay? So the first thing is that the subject and the reason have to have a relationship. All right? So take sound. That sound is the subject. Okay? It's made, right, is the reason. You have to write it down. Take sound. It's a changing thing because it's made. The reason it's a changing thing is because it's made. So they're saying you have to look at the relationship between the first subject and the reason. If that doesn't hold, if there isn't an accurate relationship between the reason and the initial subject, then your logical proof is false. Right? Okay? You gotta cook it. You're not going to be able to get it just from thinking about it. You've got to write it down and evaluate it. But I'm going to go through it just for the sake of thoroughness. Okay? All right. I mean, to give you another example. I mean, here's another one. Take a dog. Okay? It lives underwater because it has gills. All right? Does the relationship between the first statement and the last hold? Take a dog. It has gills. Because it has gills. No, dog doesn't have gills. Therefore, it's not a valid reason for logical proof that lives underwater. So it's like that. Right?
So the first statement in this model is the subject. The last one is the reason. What's the middle statement called? Some sort of condition.
Okay.
Alright.
So it's called three necessary relationships. Okay. Okay. So yeah, the subject is the first, and the last is the reason. Okay. Okay. So there's a lot of specific separate language in Tibetan that just applies to logic. There are probably 500 unique words that are just used in logic. So there's something called the reverse necessity, where you look at the last and third line as a relationship to the second line. You look at the reverse order of the relationship. And so the reverse order of the relationship has to hold, where the third statement has to hold true for the second. Okay? So in this case, it means if something's made, then it has to be a changing thing. The last item was it's made, therefore it's a changing thing. And so that relationship has to hold also. If something is made, is it a changing thing? Yeah. Logically, if you make something, you have to affect it, right? You can't bring something into being. You can't make anything do anything without changing it, right? Impossible. How can you make something if it weren't changing, right? It just doesn't make any sense, right? So if something's been created by causes, it has to be changing all the time, right? I mean, it's like if you hit a billiard ball, right, with another billiard ball, it acts upon it, right? There's a certain force, there's a certain energy, it impacts it, it moves it, it changes it, right? The energy wears out, and then it stops moving and it stops changing, and that's how all things are, right? That's how every changing thing exists. Some force acts upon an object, causing it to change, right? When the force wears out, the object stops changing. And the same is true of our lives, right? There are certain forces which are causing us, motivating us, animating us. And when those forces wear out, right, those causes wear out, then so will we, right? So that's how everything is, right? Okay. So I'm not going to go into it too much. And then the last one is another test of the veracity of a logical statement is you negate the second and third statements. If it's not number two, then it's not number three. That has to also hold. Right? If it's not a changing thing, then it's not number. So I'm not going to dwell on it because you really need to write it down, and you really need to study it, and you really need to cook it. And just saying it verbally, it's not going to be easy to hang on to. Okay, so all right. The other thing to say about Buddhist logic is you're not allowed to give a reason to someone that they don't accept. You can't cite facts that they don't accept. In Buddhist logic, you're only allowed to cite things or use things which people accept. So so in the case of a logical statement, they have to accept all three parts of a logical statement, right? So as a Buddhist logician, what you're doing is you're making connections for them, which they have not made themselves. Right? You're not trying to have some. Well, never mind. Do they accept that sound is something which is made? Yeah. Do they accept that sound is changing? Yeah. So you're showing them the connections between those things. That's all. All right.
Oh. So if you're in a debate, like you described, and you say statement one, and the person who you're debating against could say, no, I don't accept that, but
Then you can't use it.
But wouldn't they have to say why they don't? They could just be obstinate and start saying they don't accept anything.
Well, they could,
But they wouldn't, because what's the point?
Yeah. So, that's actually the beauty of Buddhist logic is that if they don't already accept the truth of all three parts, then it's a false argument. It's a false reason. It's not a valid reason. It's not a good reason from a Buddhist perspective. If you're a good Buddhist logician and Buddhist teacher, you can only present things to people. You can only talk about things with people that they already accept. And then you help them make the connections. For example, you don't go up to someone and say, there's no such thing as a God. That's crazy, right? Why would you think such a thing, right? I mean, not Buddhist logic. you know, if you're going to engage in Buddhist logic, you would say, you know, if you were a person who could make anyone be anything, would you make them happy? Say, yeah, if I can make anyone any way I wanted to, I'd make them happy, right? Like, okay, accept that. And you say, okay, so there are people who have AIDS, and there are babies who have AIDS and suffer and die. You accept that? Yeah, I accept that. So, therefore, there is no well-intentioned, well-natured being that can do anything who made everybody. Because there's babies that get AIDS and die who, you know, who are born, and a well-intentioned being would not do that. So how could there be a God? You know, that would be Buddhist logic, and they'd say, well, okay, I accepted that, and that would be a logical conclusion, wouldn't it? Now, if somebody says, I accept that, and I accept that, and I accept that, but I refuse to accept the conclusion, well, then you say, I can't really debate with somebody who's illogical. And then you walk away, and that's the end of the story. See? I mean, as a Buddhist logician, the job is to point out the steps, to point out the facts along the way, and to make the connection between those facts, such that a person can draw a conclusion, and they have no choice except to accept the conclusion, because they've accepted every fact along the way and every step along the way. And then you've linked them in a way where they see it, and where they come to their own conclusion. Right? So that's the nature of Buddhist logic and Buddhist debate. Things like that. Okay. And you know, why do we care? Because as Buddhist teachers, in this culture, in this society, people want everything to be proven. Right? They want logic, they want reasons, they want to analyze it, they want to understand it, and then we say, okay, let's debate this. Let's give me the logic behind this. And so it's important to be able to present the logic behind it, right? To be able to debate it, to be able to analyze it, right?
But it also seems inherent in the whole study of Buddhism. In fact, the Buddha himself, you've told us many times, had said, don't take my word for it. Find this out for yourself. I think deduction is a huge part of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Deduction is a huge part of it. And there are plenty of things we can't directly observe, and deductive reasoning is the best we got. And we don't want to be stuck sitting on the fence saying, I can't decide. So if take deeply hidden things, we can't perceive them directly. What would be the third part of that statement? Therefore, we must use deductive reasoning.
Right. Or trust others who can't see them directly. In which case, that's faith. And
well,
we don't like the word trust. We don't like the word faith. We
Then
like
use deductive reasoning. Mm-hmm. So, the Buddhist presentation is moving people along with ideas they accept. You know, this is a very acceptable idea. That's a very acceptable idea. That's a very acceptable idea. And then, boom! All of a sudden, you know, you connect it, and they go, "Oh, huh," and then they get something that they hadn't gotten before. They realize something that they hadn't realized before, right? That's how it works, right? Mm-hmm. You're showing them what they already have, right? You're highlighting what they already know, and making the connections and making the linkages, which they haven't yet made, and that's the art of Buddhist logic. Okay, so we need to talk about Chi-Chedrak a bit, right, which I think we started off with in the beginning of the class. So Chi is quality, and Chedrak is characteristic. Right? So the study of Chi-Chedrak is extremely important to seeing emptiness, to perceiving ultimate reality. It's really key to seeing emptiness and perceiving ultimate reality directly. So Chi, we're going to call it quality, and Chedrak, characteristic. Right? And if you really want to see emptiness directly, then you have to really dig into this, and you have to really understand this, and you have to really get it. You know, and it is the key to seeing your future lives, becoming enlightened, and putting an end to all suffering, right? So, So quality, you can say, we can use the example of a car. So when we talk about quality, you can say carness, car, quality called car, like car with quotation marks, right? And so you didn't see my cartoon that I cut out of the New Yorker. You guys didn't see it. I was preparing for class and I found that old New Yorker and I was looking through it and it had a Cheech cartoon. So what's the difference between a car or a train and train? Right? Very important distinction. Right? So car, right? Yeah, there it is. Oh.
Sorry.
I'll get it later.
Okay.
Thank you. So when you have a quality called car, okay, so it's very important. You don't have a pen and pencil, I'll tell you, write it down if you have a pen and pencil. You have a pen and pencil, you can put it down. So write down, it's important to think about it and study it. Thing which is characteristic of car. Thing which is characteristic of car. What is characteristic of car? What equals a car, for example?
An actual car.
Shape.
So we're talking about car as an idea. Think of the idea of car, not a car. Car.
So, for example, Buckminster Fuller designed a three-wheeled car. I forget what it was called, but it's still got the essence of you get in it, it transports you from A to B. So perhaps the function.
So there's a carness, or a concept car. There is car. There is car came into being, right?
Yeah.
Car exists. The notion car exists, right? What is characteristic of a car? What leads someone to look at an object and say, it's got three round things, it's got a body shaped like that, it's a car. It has two things, two round wheels, and a body shaped like that. It's not a car.
It's a bicycle with a body, fuselage.
So there's car. And what characteristic has the quality of car? When you look at this, what characteristic does it have that makes it a car? Or doesn't make it a car? How did you look at this and decide that's not fitting into the quality of car? This is not characteristic of the quality of car.
Are you asking this question seriously?
Yeah.
Well, one is you can't get in it and drive it. Two is it doesn't have wheels. So there's more than one characteristic which we use to define the idea
So
of a car.
so you have to think about that. You have to analyze that. You have to evaluate that. Where did the quality car come from?
It's like a negative almost. You're looking at everything. It's not.
Is it the sum of the
That's
parts?
not car. You're like first looking at everything that's not car, like wood. Like I'm seeing a cup. There's not car, not car, not car. Then you see something that is car, maybe a steering wheel. Like okay, that can maybe be a car, and then start putting pieces together that are.
There are lots of things in the world which are characteristic of or typical of a car. Some fit and some don't, right? So there is the quality of car, and there are things which are characteristic of that.
Of that quality.
Mm-hmm. So this is actually one of the most important things you can ever learn. This is actually one of the most important things you can ever comprehend. It's a key, essential element to understanding and perceiving emptiness. Right? So it takes a certain amount of kelwa, or virtue. It takes a certain amount of goodness to be able to understand it. And that comes from helping other people, serving teachers, thinking kind thoughts, doing good deeds day after day. And so you have to collect a certain amount of kelwa or virtue to be able to really understand it. And that's true of everything in the Buddhist path all the way to Tantra. I could say there's a tantric angel here right now, and be sitting there going, "You're crazy. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what you're talking about." And that's a function of having a certain amount of virtue or purity, right? So you have to have a tremendous virtue to see emptiness and to understand it. So when they teach Madhyamika in the monastery, they typically spend 6 months or a year doing virtue. They'll spend a year in meditation, reciting mantras, or doing some great virtue to collect the karma, so that the mind is a fertile field to be able to perceive and understand these things. What is it that will allow the mind, or facilitate the mind, or cause the mind to get it, right? For it to click, for it to make sense, right? The mind has to be functioning in a certain way. The mind has to have a certain degree of subtlety and just virtue to get it, and that's just goodness, right? And if these things don't make sense, or they seem irrelevant, or they're just sort of mumbo jumbo, then go and collect more virtue and more killing, right? So if we readily understood it, we could see emptiness directly, right? You understand subtle impermanence directly, and then you see dependent origination, and then you see emptiness directly. So there's this thing called chi, which is the karmas, right? Kar. The idea of kar, the concept kar. When you close your eyes and think kar, what do you see? That's chi. Okay? When you hear the word kar, what appears to you? What do you think of? Right? How do people know it's a car when they look at it? Why do they apprehend it as a car? What is it in their mind that makes them go, "That's a car"? If it has 2 wheels, if it has 3 wheels, if it has 5 wheels, what is it in their mind that results in them saying, that's a car, a car? Big distinction between a car and car. A car is singular. It's the one thing. It's a Chevrolet. It's a 3-wheeled vehicle. It's whatever, which is characteristic of car. Okay. We make something in our mind called a car, karmas. We create car or karmas in our mind, and then we decide what fits it, what's characteristic of it, what gets that, what goes in that bucket. Right? How does that work? Mm-hmm. A car and car are different. A car is characteristic of the quality of karmas, right? So you have to think about it, you have to practice it, you have to meditate on it. So that's all. Any questions?
Is there any discussion of memory in talk of karnas?
Mm-hmm. They go. There are 2 ancillary sort of divisions, if you will. One of which is it's a study of mental imaging, and so one form of mental imaging is memory, but it's not really the point. You can say, "Well, I saw a car and someone told me it was a car and I remembered it," but that's not really the point. And it's not just car. Everything's that way. There's male, right? Female, chair, cup, clock, fan. Right? How is it that this is characteristic of the quality fan? How is it that this is characteristic of fan? How, when I look at stuff, do I decide that it is characteristic of fan? And when I look at that, I put it in the fan bucket or I don't. Right? Where did the fan bucket come from, first of all? Is the first question. Where did fan come from? How did fan come into being? And how do all of the bits and bobs that I perceive get separated into fan and not fan? Car and not car? How does my mind make the distinction that this is fan, this is car. This thing is characteristic of fan. This thing is characteristic of cup. This thing is characteristic of pen. This thing is characteristic of key. Where did key come from? Right? And how is it that when I look at this, it's not characteristic of key? When I look at this, it is characteristic of key. And you have to really delve into that, and you have to really cook it, and you have to really study it. And it is a very profound analysis or penetration into the nature of perception, into the nature of existence. So I heartily encourage you to meditate on it, think about it, cook it, study it, read up on it. Do everything you can to really wrap your mind around the fact that this is characteristic of cup or mug. This is characteristic of table. I just created a table and called this something like that. So the bucket and what goes in the bucket. Why did I create that bucket? Why did I put that in that bucket?
Yeah. Chashing
Puki Jukshin Meto Tram Rira Lingshi Degem Bani Songye Shindu Mite Awargi Dolam Namda Jingva Jupasho Idam Guru Ramadavam Niryatayami Devadidi Evam Sunam Vishe Zosum Sunam Vishe By the power of these sacred words, may we quickly penetrate into the nature of reality, perceiving its ultimate nature, ending all suffering everywhere, very quickly in this very life. Thank you. The first words of the prayer are not